Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with your favourite football analyst, Gareth, for Talking Tactics. Make sure you smash that like button and hit the subscribe button. We're about three, I think, away from 4,600. So you can help us get there. Like, subscribe, and comment below your thoughts on the Arsenal game. I know it's been a couple of days, but we're going to take a bit more of an analytical view into the game. Gareth, you've got plenty of Viz images for us to look at today. But just first of all, in general, we've just spoken before we came onto the show. It was a tight game, and I guess some encouraging signs, and definitely could have gone either way in terms of the result.
Yeah, I think it should have gone one way. I mean, really, I think if we'd have took those two Ollie Watkins chances, which were, let's be honest, very, very, very good chances, which you would normally, especially the header. I mean, at one, to put us 1-0 up. Well, as we've just spoken about, I think if we go ahead in the game, I think we win the game. I really do. I think we were good enough to win the game. Neither team sort of really sort of blew everything out of the water as such. But yeah, if we'd have scored the goals, I think we'd have won the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll talk. Obviously, we've got our usual passing networks, game flow, but we've also got some information that you've done around kind of where we've started the expected threat in terms of our starting passes and then what areas we're looking to end those, and maybe that gives an indication as to some of the attacking play that we might see across the season. So, starting off with the home passing network, anything in particular that you're seeing here in terms of what we were looking to do? Anything different from last season or any signs?
No, I mean we can see a lot. Sort of Anana is the one on top of Conser there, the sort of the medium-sized dot on top of Conser. So quite close really, and McGinn sort of very towards Dina, and that sort of points towards more of a defensive structure for me, I think, because a lot of this is quite deep. We're sort of in. We know that we played in a mid block, which was good. It was highlighted a lot on Sky and everything, and I think it worked really well. I think we did stop what I highlighted before the game, which was Odegaard and Saka combinations down that right hand side. Yes, they had a lot of involvement, but it wasn't such a threat of an involvement. And I think a lot of these substitutions we consider, we really sort of tried to compact that left-hand side a little bit. Now, this is not a bit rudimentary, of course, because they're not all stuck on that side, but the structure is generally pretty good. We're solid through the centre, and we've got the two wider midfielders backing up the fullbacks. And I think Leon Bailey's defensive work was testament to that.
Yeah, he did some really good work, particularly getting a couple of big clearances away. With regards to the mid block and kind of dropping that little bit, the line not being quite as high, do you think that's helping, or in that particular situation, did it help Morgan Rogers because he's picking up the ball in an area, like say we broke up play, he's picking up the ball in an area where he can then run at players and get those legs moving and really get into his stride. Whereas I guess if we were a real high line, he'd maybe be receiving the ball 10, 15 yards further forward, in which case when he turns, he's got players straight on him. Do you think that's kind of helping him a little bit?
Yeah, I would agree to an extent. I don't think it's so much to do with the high line. I think it's more to do with the mid block, as it
Yeah.
were, because you could
Yeah.
still sit in the mid block and play a high line. So I think you're right in some. Yeah, it's more to do with that mid block. Can we win the ball in sort of not higher areas, but in that middle area? And like we spoke about on this podcast quite a few times, don't we? Can we get the ball into him in those decent areas that you're talking about? And we did that.
Yeah. I think the next part of his game is to really finish those moves off with I mean, he would have done had Ollie Watkins put that chance away. That was just, he laid it on a plate for him. But you get my point. A shot on target, or no, like a real powerful shot, or sliding someone in clear for another clear chance. That's what we want to see from. So he gets the reward for those runs.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, provide an assist or score a goal. I thought there was a couple of occasions, especially that run where he beat sort of 3 or 4 players. I thought he could have just sort of almost done an old Romario type finish and just toe poked that into that
Yeah,
bottom corner
yeah,
almost. And I
yeah.
think there was a couple of instances where that could have happened. So yeah, I'd agree with you.
Yeah. And Arsenal's passing networks, anything that you noticed from them, like anything that they were particularly trying to do? I mean, it doesn't look that much different from Villa's, to be fair.
No, it's not that much different. It's just the fact that Saliba and Gabriel play very high. They play quite
Yeah.
wide to each other. So the one in front of Saliba there on the left, Gabriel, sorry, is Timber, who comes in off of that left hand
Right.
side, that
Yeah.
left back So that's him there. So yeah, they're very similar to us, and they play this sort of a 3-2-5 like we spoke about last week in possession. The impact of David Raya there is also quite prominent on the edge of the box, spends a lot of time sort of in the build-up phase as well, happy to be involved. And Saka on the top right-hand side there, and Odegaard just in that sort of dot behind him in the half space there. So those sort of things are quite handy for them to have, and Havertz is the smaller dot, and of course wasn't involved so much.
Yeah. Interesting that they don't have like anyone. I mean, Villa is the same, but you're thinking someone here like a proper centre forward almost. Like it's just strange how there's not that these days. But I guess that's the way it is now.
It was almost like a false nine, isn't it? Almost what they would call a false nine in Havertz. But yeah, I didn't think we kept him really quiet. I think, and I think he knew that he wouldn't get the better of Conte maybe or Pau Torres, so maybe he sort of dropped off a little bit more. But possibly a decoy as well to allow the wider players to go forward, of course.
Yeah. And then the game flow. Anything to note here? I mean, we've commented even game, and it hinged on the Ollie Watkins chance, and then the substitution of Trossard, and then that was that really.
I think this is almost a mirror image of our one against West Ham last week, where we scored the 2 goals sort of in similar, and it was that sort of flow of a game where one team was sort of going ahead for a few minutes. You had a bit of a flow for the next, and it alternated quite a little bit more. But I think when I look back, it was very similar to the West Ham one. So it's just a shame we couldn't capitalise on that sort of 20 to 40 minute mark, and then after 60 minutes, which is that's when the chances were, wasn't it? So yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just into our kind of final third and our attacking, and then this expected threat. So just in terms of the direction of play for our final third passes. I mean, anything to really pick out here that you noticed or didn't, or that we did or didn't do?
Yeah, I think one thing to notice is that a lot of the passes into the final third are in wider areas. They're not in central areas so much. You've only got sort of like sort of let's call it 4 or 5 in central areas there, and a lot of it is where sort of in these wider areas. And I think this is where we do miss it, Douglas. I think Mark, one of our colleagues, spoke about it, didn't he, on the group? It's almost where we miss a little bit of an incisive passer to an extent, and a lot of XT come from Morgan Rogers' carries, so the passes is not so great, is so high here, but yeah, more on Leon Bailey's right hand side, you could say, and sort of that you can obviously tell who that pass is from, the longer pass out to Bailey there.
I think I do take George's point around Luiz, and then we are going to have probably a different way of playing. Could you see maybe Emi Buendia forcing his way in to maybe make some of these more incisive passes? Do you think he could be that type of player?
I think it might be the case, probably more the case, that he changes the 2 in midfield of Onana and Tielemans, and maybe plays a Barrenechea or somewhere like that there, and or just keeps Onana there and plays Buendia, like you're saying. It's risky though, that.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Because the out of those 4 players, Tielemans is playing really, really well. Onana's the big signing, and that's the one that he's wanted in terms of giving that physical presence, and you can see that that's made a difference already. Then Morgan Rogers is playing so well; he's playing brilliantly at the moment. McGinn's the captain, but you're thinking McGinn's the one who might be the one to make way for someone a little bit more imaginative in those positions.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players, you play your way into the team, obviously, but you play your way into the team not just in training, but in a week to week. And Rodgers, he's not going to come out of that side, is he? And you wouldn't have thought Onana or Tielemans at the moment would probably come out of that side. So you're not going to take Leon Bailey out. So yeah, you're probably right.
Interesting one to watch. Now, this expected threat in terms of our passing. So you looked at the start zones for this. What does this one tell us? What do you, and how does this work in terms of analysing the play?
Yeah, so top left in our own half on the left-hand side, there is probably a lot of what got to do with Pau Torres' passing, because his XT numbers are usually sort of reasonably good for a centre-back, and with his passing level as well. So similar to Van Hecker at Brighton, always got sort of good XT numbers for centre-halves. And the right-hand side, there's probably more of an Arna type thing. So in those deeper mid, our own half sort of thing. And yeah, the left-hand side is more sort of like the Dina sort of effect, maybe, who wasn't so advanced, maybe. So, and in the box there, it's a difficult one to call because it could be a Leon Bailey type thing. I think it's more passes across the box there into sort of a cross and up, maybe. But yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky map to really sort of decipher who was doing what.
And then the end zones. What were you noticing here about where we were trying to get to, or where the passes did end up?
Yeah, we see a lot of XT sort of end zones like this that are in central as for obvious reasons. Balls are played into the box, but on the left-hand side there, yeah, you're looking at passes sort of like the end of the pass, if you like. So into Dina, into the wider players out on that left-hand side, and inside the box there to Leon Bailey, who takes up obviously a lot of positions just inside the box. So I think we need to sort of shape that a little bit better and just compact those three areas into the box and just get players feeding balls into the box a little bit more.
Yeah, it was one thing I mentioned, I think, on the Fulham reaction. We didn't seem to get, like, Morgan Rogers carries the ball far. But when I was looking at, say, Dino on the left-hand side, I don't know how many players we actually got in the box to get on the end of a cross. You're probably talking Ollie Watkins would be hanging around. Did we get Bailey going in at the back post? Did we have Onana or Tielemans running in? Did we have McGinn? Like, I don't know how many players we actually got into the box to make a target. And again, Douglas Luiz would always be kind of running into the box. So there was numerous goals that he scored from, or even like Moussa Diaby would be doing that. So this whole point about goals and where the goals are going to come from, admittedly, it's against Arsenal, so there's probably a little bit more caution there. But I'll be interested to see this over the next few games. How many players we get in the box to be targets to receive crosses? Because we've got, if we don't do that, then how are we going to score all these goals?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid point, isn't it? You've got to get bodies in the box to score the goals. And we don't seem to sling that many crosses in nowadays, do we,
No.
really, particularly? And I think when you've got players like Deeney, good crossing ability, you should be able to do that. Arsenal sort of do the opposite. They sort of tend to cut the ball back a lot. So maybe we could incorporate a little bit of that as well. But yeah, I mean, Ollie didn't look sharp enough in the box for me, and like you say, Leon Bailey could be adding in. Then what do you do about Onana and Tielemans? Does one go? Does one sit? And neither really committed, did they, to making those runs into the box? So yeah, it's a valid point.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And then just a quick look at Arsenal's passing zones starting it, and then their passes in the final third. I mean, heavily to Saka and Odegaard in that of their right channel, so you can see where they're aiming to get to.
Yeah, we highlighted it. I highlighted it on my analysis thread that this is where they did it again. Last week, and they really sort of incorporate. They really tried to push that narrative of getting Saka and Odegaard into these half space positions and sort of manipulating passes and combinations to end up getting into the box, or for allowing Saka to come back on his left foot and have a whop at goal, if you like. So. But yeah, they've got a lot of passes there. Even the sort of the lighter shaded areas, you can see that they're passing. Their XT is starting from a variety of areas, and the right hand side is very clustered there, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you think it's funny, or do you think it's what would be the word? Like, you can see that the Arsenal highlight Odegaard, Saka, Odegaard, Saka, Odegaard, Saka. We knew that Liverpool under Klopp would just go fullbacks overlapping, Robertson and Trent. Do you think it's a little bit unimaginative that teams just go for the same point and just keep hammering those positions until at least one time that a team loses a bit of concentration, or a lucky bounce, or a piece of brilliance comes through? Like, is that how teams now operate? Do they just go, right, just target? Obviously Villa used to do it, get the ball to Grealish, but do you not think there'll be other areas to attack? Are Villa going to go down that route of just give the ball to Morgan Rogers and let him run? Like, is this what we're going to come for?
I mean, the two teams that you've mentioned, it works for them. The scenarios, the patterns of play that you chose, it works for them. So no, I don't think it is silly. I think it's one of them things, and we're clearly looking for Morgan Rogers. We're clearly looking to get the ball into Morgan Rogers. Apart from that, and we're not sort of utilising that left-hand side like we did so much last year. He's obviously trying to find ways of playing him through more central areas for whatever reason. And I think that's where sort of it's too predictable to get the ball, to spray the ball out to Leon Bailey all the time and let him have a run at you all the time. That's a Salah type thing, isn't it? But it works. It does work for the top teams. I mean, if you struggle to find patterns of play for other teams, you might say it's not always the case. But yeah, what are we going to do? How are we going to approach it? I think Rodgers is the thing, but I still believe that getting the two players like Rodgers or Bailey, the two in behind Ollie Watkins in those 10 positions, I really think is the way forward for that. And then have the fullbacks that are able to sort of go out wide and just to create diversions almost. But I think those 2-10 options to get the ball into there is really key.
Yeah, I think Bailey's probably operating at about 80 to 85% at the moment, because he's not got that zip to go around the outside. I know he prefers to cut in on his left, but sometimes if he goes on his right foot, then that's caused a lot of problems to defenses in the past. And I just don't think he's quite got that zip there to do it. And Kevin and I were talking the other day about, you're looking at McGinn and Watkins who've come off on 62 minutes in the last 2 games. And Bailey's not quite there. And they're 3 big players for us that aren't quite at the level. So it is going to take them a little bit of time to get up to speed, isn't it?
You do wonder, don't you? Like you said about Leon Bailey and you said about Emi Buendia. Those 2 players, Rodgers and Buendia, would be perfect in behind Ollie Watkins, I think. But then that means you're omitting Leon Bailey from the side, aren't you? Can Emi Buendia
or McGinn? Yeah.
Or McGinn. Yeah, or McGinn. I mean, you can swap them over. So, I mean, what do you do? Will Buendia do the defensive work that Leon Bailey does from wide areas? Possibly not. But I think we just need to sort of almost, in an attacking phase, have Dino and Ned going outside, but just be a bit more central. And if that's what you want to do, then do it like that. But we need to commit to something, don't we?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, and it does feel like we're a couple of players short in a couple of positions, especially with the players that aren't quite up to speed yet. I do admit that we've got Mings and Kamara to come back in. They'll be brilliant additions, but how quickly are they going to get up to speed? Buendia's been in the squad but hasn't featured yet. So is he going to take a slowly, softly approach with those 2 players? I would imagine so, because if you're looking at the current situation now. So yeah, it does feel like there's probably a little bit of business to do, but we'll see what we can do. I don't know what you feel about that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think Kamara comes in. When Kamara comes in, that changes a lot. And I mean a lot. I really think that changes the structure of the team, because then you can play a 4-3-3. You can sort of, because you've always got him sitting, you can have an Arnold Tielemans either side of him. That's where I think McGinn comes into a bit of trouble, because I don't think he gets into that shape over Tielemans or Onana. So that's what you've got to do. You can then push Tielemans a bit further forward, and you can then have different scenarios in the 10 positions. So I think that's right.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting, and you are going to be with us all the way through on Talking Tactics. Thank you very much for your analysis. As always, Gareth, where can people find you?
You can find me at that Garate JC or at One Villa Analysis.
Top man. And make sure everyone hits that like button and hits that subscribe button. Help us. We're like 2 or 3 away from 4,600. We know we want to get to 5,000. So if we can get there as quick as possible, that would be amazing. Get your comments in below as well. We'll be back for Fans Forum tonight. And also, obviously, we've got Leicester previews, Leicester reactions, and maybe some transfer talk if we make any signings or any more outgoings. But thank you for watching. And as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.